taste. So if it's a race to produce a project at a rapid pace, a blockbuster vision at matinee rates, I know a big budget beauty with impeccable taste should get you what you need to put a smile on your face with just the right blend of leather and lace. Madame Grindhouse is gonna be your guide to a weird, wild, wonderful world we're taking inside. Step right up, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. She's here to provide Madame Grindhouse.
Hello, my little sprocket friends and cinematic masochists. It's me, Madame Grindhouse, your cinematrix of the silver screen, and I've selected something special for this, the grand opening of the Roxie. While there are literally hundreds of old-school Grindhouse movies out there, there's only been a handful that anyone could call classics. You know, movies everybody's heard of, but weren't giant hits except on the Grindhouse circuits. Movies like Coffee, The Toolbox Murders, and I Spit on Your Grave, which we all know was the gold standard of the rape revenge movie. But there's another classic in the I Spit on Your Grave mold. Rather than being set in the backwoods in the middle of nowhere, this brings everything to the gritty streets of New York and actually manages to make the whole thing a tale not only of revenge, but how unresolved trauma and isolation can lead to tragedy. Tonight's feature presentation, Ms. 45. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, gang. This movie can be hard to watch. It is a rape revenge movie after all, and sadly, in this subgenre, you can't have revenge without the other thing first. And like I said, this movie also gets into the trauma that happens in the aftermath. So if that kind of thing legitimately upsets you, the exit's right over there, and we'll see you for the next feature, okay? No harm, no foul, I get it. Let me give you a few seconds to decide. Okay, let's roll it. The movie is the story of Thana, played by Zoe Tamalis, a seamstress who works for Albert, a fashion designer in the garment district. The interesting thing about Thana is that she's mute. She doesn't say a word throughout the entire movie. Well, almost, but we'll get into that later. This movie wastes no time getting to the point, because as Thana walks home, she gets assaulted by a creep in a mask, which is bad enough because the asshole gets away, but then it happens again when a burglar breaks into her apartment. Only this time, Thana ain't going down without a fight. Now, a lot of rape revenge movies made during the heyday of the Grindhouse were often criticized, and rightfully so, for using the revenge aspect of the plot as a paper-thin excuse to show scenes of the heroine being brutalized on camera for cheap titillation. Ms. 45 was one of those movies accused of doing so when it first came out. However, it's undergone some reappraisal over the last few years, and I find myself agreeing with that reappraisal. There's nothing titillating about what happens to Thana. Both sequences are nasty, mean, and edited in such a way to drive home the brutality of the assaults. There's nothing sexy about any of this, and that's the way it should be. After the burglar's dealt with, Thana dumps the body in her bathtub and tries to cope with what happened to her. At work the next day, Albert has a tantrum and rips the shirt he's looking at off the mannequin, which triggers Thana and sends her into shock, until she sees the trash can at the office and gets an idea. "Thana, honey, that's a bread knife. You'll never get through the bone with that." "Easy there, Thana, you're wasting good nail polish." Now naturally, you can't just dispose of an entire corpse's worth of body parts all at once. God knows I've tried. So Thana stores what's left of the burglar in the fridge, and, as we'll see throughout the rest of the movie, takes each bag out individually and drops it in various locations throughout the city. Before that, though, she cleans her bathtub and has vivid hallucinations of being attacked, and the bathtub drain backing up with the burglar's remains. Although, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure whether the drain backing up is a hallucination or not. The movie doesn't really make it clear and quickly moves on from this scene. The next morning, Thana heads out with one of the bags of burglar and immediately runs into her nosy landlady and her yappy little dog.
What's in that bag?
Tell you what, she'll tell you what's in the bag if you explain why in the hell you just seem to be standing right outside her apartment for no good reason, lady. Anyway, Thana goes to work and has a flashback which causes her to burn the shirt she's ironing, getting Albert's attention.
Thana, what's wrong, honey? Are you all right?
After work, Thana heads to another part of the city to dump another piece of the burglar, but she's spotted by a cat-calling creep who sees her get out of the cab and starts to follow her. He finds the bag and assumes Thana dropped it. He starts running to catch up to her to return it, which is definitely not something Thana wants, so she starts running. She winds up in a dead-end alley, and as the guy approaches... Hey, he should have known better than to chase strange women down dead-end alleys, right? Thana's handiwork comes to public attention when a homeless guy finds the burglar's remains in a trash can, even to the point of making the news. As for Thana herself, she's been making mistakes at work, which causes Albert to call her on the carpet. Albert invites Thana to the company Halloween party, to which she gives a non-committal, "I'll try," and when one of her co-workers asks what's wrong, she tells her. At lunch, Thana and her co-workers spot a couple making out heavily in the restaurant, and things get even more tasteless when the guy comes over and hits on them after his date leaves. Fortunately, Thana's friend Laurie ain't putting up with that shit.
Fuck off. You heard me. Get fucked.
Personally, I deal with creeps a lot more directly. I find kicking them in the balls than showing them a blowtorch and a cheese grater gets the point across pretty clearly. Unfortunately, this asshole can't take a hint and starts harassing Thana on the street as she leaves.
You got nothing to lose.
Ooh, you just made a real big mistake there, buddy boy. This is the point where Thana has had enough, and that night she heads out on the street, this time looking for assholes she can take out. And in New York, there's plenty of targets, including an abusive pimp, a gang of muggers, and a sheik looking for a good time. By the way, this shot, best one in the movie, followed closely by these shots.
No!
Yeah, Thana's crossed fully over to the dark side and moved on to premeditated murder, as we see when she follows the guy as he heads home. Note that all this guy was doing was kissing his girlfriend before she went back to work. He heads home and, luckily for him, manages to get inside his apartment building before Thana's able to shoot him. She does manage to find a real piece of work who strangled his wife's cat after finding her cheating on him with another woman, but then Thana gets a surprise of her own. And what does Thana get for her trouble? More trauma! When Thana returns home, she hears the dog growling at her from behind the landlady's door when she stops on the landing. She also gets the rest of the body parts out of the fridge, planning to ditch 2 immediately and putting the 3rd in her closet. But as soon as she leaves via the fire escape, the nosy landlady lets herself into the apartment and the dog makes a beeline for the closet.
It's locked. You wait here, and I'm gonna get the key and I'll be right back.
Reason number 12 why landlords should be abolished, right there. The damn dog knocks over one of Thana's plants, staining the rug below it. And when Thana comes home early from work, after Albert gives everybody the afternoon off to get ready for the Halloween party, she notices the stain and realizes her landlady has been there. She asks to take the dog for a walk and... oh no! Since this is the kind of thing that can really upset people, let me say this right now. Thana does not shoot the dog. He comes back at the end of the movie. She just left him tied to the log at the waterfront. She leaves a note for the nosy landlady saying he ran off after another dog while she was walking him and gets ready for the Halloween party. Thana, sweetie, I'm pretty sure that's not what they mean by getting loaded before the party. Speaking of the party, we find that most of the male guests there are kinda scummy to varying degrees.
Tell me, you've got to go to Puerto Rico. The Spanish girl there. $300 you could get a virgin. They've got to ship them in from the other islands.
But you promised after we had Lori that you'd get a vasectomy.
I changed my mind. Albert, who's that girl you with tonight?
Yes.
she's one of my proteges.
Back at Thana's apartment, the nosy landlady who just doesn't give a damn about her tenant's privacy goes back to the closet, and after getting the bejesus scared out of her by another tenant, she swipes the last trash bag and finds out exactly what it is the damn dog has been so attracted to all this time. Back at the party, Albert takes Thana upstairs and tries to seduce her. This does not go well for him. Nor does it go well for most of the dudes at the party. But, tragically, Laurie grabs a knife and stabs Thana, causing her to utter her only line she has in the movie. And finally, like I said earlier, the damn dog returns to the nosy landlady. This movie is dark, grimy, and visceral. It pulls no punches when it comes to Thana's assault or her gradual spiral into darkness. We feel sympathy for her, even as we watch her change from a victim trying to keep it from happening again, to a completely disassociated murderer who seems to basically be out to wipe out any and all men from her life. You get the feeling that if she had a better network of friends, or even felt less isolated from everyone else because of her disability, maybe things could have gone, well, not better exactly, but she probably could have gotten the help she needed. Also worth noting is that while Thana feels isolated from the other women in the film, she has a strange sort of protection over them. Every man she kills has done wrong to either her or another woman, and when Laurie kills her, Thana is shocked and heartbroken that she isn't being extended that same protection. Laurie holds the knife by her crotch in the lead-up, making the knife, and subsequent murder of Thana, into a long-removed extension of her rape, but this time enacted by, in her own word, her sister. The film does have its flaws. It moves a little too quickly from scene to scene, and while Zoe Taberlin's performance is excellent, since this was only the second movie directed by Abel Ferrara, he doesn't seem to have developed the skills necessary to fully convey what Thana's thinking to the audience, which does make her descent into spree killer modes kind of come out of nowhere. Also, the nosy landlady is just way too over the top, giving her awkward dialogue calling Thana a witch and a phantom. This just makes her too broad of a character for a movie that, exploitation movie or not, is actually pretty restrained compared to other films of its type. Also, the composer and the sound mixer both need to sit in a corner and think about what they did, preferably while listening to the best of the Shags through high-def earbuds. As I mentioned before, the movie was panned by critics when it first came out, but as time has gone on, it's become heralded as a classic of the thriller genre and praised as a hyper-stylized indictment of the bullshit women dealt with back in the grimy days of New York and still deal with today. It's not necessarily a fun movie, but it is a riveting and engaging one. Draft House Films picked up the rights and have gotten it released on DVD and Blu-ray. It's also streaming on both Shudder and Amazon. Check this one out if you're looking for something grimy yet artistic in your Grindhouse diet. Next time, we'll cover something a little more fun, as well as showing how the Grindhouse is spread beyond the confines of the movies. So join me, won't you, for more of what lurks on the other side of the silver screen.